like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
That night CTO was supposed to be just another fandom storm, another wave of excitement that would come and go like thousands before it. But it became something else entirely. Beneath the noise, there was a quiet stillness, a kind of recognition that spread across the world without anyone having to say it out loud. It was the moment everyone realized that whatever existed between Jimin and Jungkook was beyond labels, beyond assumptions. It wasn't something that could be explained or owned. It simply existed, delicate, undeniable, and deeply human. When Jungkook posted that photo days later, a pale blue sky fading into white, it looked ordinary at first glance. Just a sky, just a caption, everything feels lighter now. But for those who had been watching closely, it meant more. The tone, the timing, the feeling beneath those 6 words, it carried a warmth that couldn't be mistaken. A few hours later, Jimin appeared on Weverse and wrote, "That's good. I'm happy too." And once again, CTO caught fire. To outsiders, it looked trivial, a friendly exchange between 2 artists who had known each other for over a decade. But for those who had witnessed their journey from the narrow dorm rooms of 2013 to the luminous arenas of 2025, it was everything. It was a soft continuation of a story that had never needed words. Over the years, fans had come to recognize the rhythm between them, not the kind that shouts or demands attention, but the quiet kind that lingers. Jikook has never relied on grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Their connection speaks in subtleties, the way Jimin's eyes soften when Jungkook speaks, the instinctive way Jungkook searches for Jimin's presence in a crowded room, the quiet laughter that passes between them without sound. It is a language that belongs only to them. One fan wrote on X that night, "Some people want confirmation. But maybe what we've seen all along, the comfort, the care, the way they look at each other, is already confirmation enough." The post went viral not because it proved anything, but because it captured what so many had felt. And maybe that's the truth, the kind that doesn't need to be shouted. Because no rumor, no theory, no denial can erase what's visible in the way their eyes meet. What lives between them isn't defined by romance or friendship, but by years of shared silence, laughter, exhaustion, and music. They grew up side by side, 2 souls shaped by the same storms, learning to breathe in sync even when the world demanded they walk separately. A few months later, Jungkook sat down for a magazine interview. The journalist asked him if he believed in destiny. He paused, looked down for a moment, and then smiled faintly. "Sometimes," he said, "you don't realize who makes you feel at home until they're gone for a while." No one needed him to say the name. Everyone already knew who he meant. So when he whispered Jiminie during that quiet live, it wasn't just a nickname. It was history condensed into a single breath, years of gratitude, affection, and understanding wrapped inside one word. Fans didn't scream this time. They didn't need to. They simply watched in silence, knowing they were witnessing something honest, something that existed beyond speculation. It wasn't about fan edits or theories anymore. It was about something real, something that had survived fame, distance, and time. Later, Jimin posted a photo of a sunset, soft orange light melting into violet, with the caption, "Some things don't need to be explained." And maybe that was his answer. Because some bonds don't live in public statements. They live in gestures, in a smile that lingers too long, in a word whispered when the cameras stop rolling, in the comfort of sitting beside someone who has seen every version of you and still stays. Love, in whatever form it takes, doesn't always need to be announced. Sometimes it just breathes quietly between 2 people who understand it's theirs alone. That's what the world felt when Jungkook said, "Jiminie." It wasn't confirmation in words. It was confirmation in truth, a truth that doesn't demand to be understood, only felt. Yet, if you looked closely, the story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, fans noticed the smallest details. A bracelet Jimin wore that matched Jungkook's, a lyric change during a concert, the way Jungkook's voice softened when he mentioned, "someone who always supports me silently." They were threads, tiny, almost invisible, but when woven together, they painted a story of connection that refused to fade. The world kept spinning, the noise of celebrity life carried on, but amid the chaos, there was always that steady hum, the rhythm of something that had survived everything. It wasn't about who loved whom or what label fit. It was about two people who had grown up in the same light and shadows, learning to find home in each other's presence even when they stood oceans apart. There's a certain beauty in things that remain unspoken. Maybe that's why people are drawn to Jikook, not because of mystery, but because of truth. A truth that isn't loud or obvious, but gentle. A truth that reminds people of the way love, in its purest form, doesn't demand validation. It just exists. Years from now, when people look back at this era, the concerts, the laughter, the fleeting lives, the midnight posts, they'll remember not the theories, but the feeling. The feeling of watching two souls move in harmony through the noise of the world. And perhaps that's what made that moment so unforgettable. Because it wasn't about proving something to the world. It was about showing that some connections can't be erased by distance, silence, or the passing of time. When Jungkook whispered, "Jiminie," he wasn't declaring a secret. He was acknowledging a truth that had always been there. The truth that home isn't a place, it's a person. And when Jimin smiled at the sunset and wrote, "Some things don't need to be explained," it wasn't avoidance. It was peace. It was knowing that what they share doesn't need to fit anyone else's definition. Because love, real love, doesn't shout. It lingers. It breathes in the pauses, lives in the spaces between words, and survives in the smallest gestures. That's why, long after the hashtags fade and the world moves on, people will still remember the way Jungkook said his name, not as an idol, not as a symbol, but as someone he's known all his life. Someone who makes the world feel lighter. Someone who feels like home. It wasn't confirmation in words. It was confirmation in truth, the kind that lives quietly in the heart and never really goes away. In the end, it was never about proving who they are to the world. It was about the quiet truth that some connections simply are. Long after the lights fade, long after the cameras stop rolling, there will always be that moment, that soft, unguarded space where one name is spoken like a heartbeat. Jiminie. It's not a confession. It's a memory, a comfort, a promise kept through years of storms and silence. Because what they have isn't built on spectacle, it's built on time and trust. On the invisible threads that tie two souls together, even when the world isn't watching. So maybe the real story was never written in headlines or theories. Maybe it was written in the pauses between words, in the smiles they couldn't hide, in the simple way they keep finding each other, again and again. And that's the beauty of it. Not everything real needs to be explained. Some things are meant to be felt. Because love, in its truest, quietest form, doesn't ask for attention. It just stays.